All right. All right, so this is our official anxiety Q&A session, everyone. So, introduction. So yeah, we better, like we said, like she said, introductions of ourselves. So, for those who don't know me, I am Sam Mitchell. I am the founder of Autism Rocks and Rolls Corporation, but also a podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls. It is about autism and how we cope with daily struggles that you may or may not understand. It's grown so much that we built a lot of sponsors and a nonprofit, and I've done a lot of collaborative work, which is one of the things I'm doing today to destigmatize one of the common autism behaviors, anxiety.
Awesome. Sam and I met, must be about 6 months ago now, Sam, I think. Was it on a meeting? And we thought that it would be a good idea to pool our experience. So I'm Hayley Wheeler, and I created Emotion Mind Dynamic after overcoming depression myself and helping my son, who was 11 at the time, overcome lifelong anxiety, taking him from 8 or 9 panic attacks a day to nothing we are now 7.5 years. So we just thought that we'd get together, bring our minds together and just do a Q&A around our different perspectives of anxiety, our different experiences. And tonight is that. So welcome, everyone.
Tonight for you, day for me, depending on where you guys are.
Yeah, we are 7:30 at night here in the UK and 2:30 p.m. with yourselves.
Right. So let's see what our next. So we also want to show a little intro video because I think we could talk about it, but I also want to show what anxiety can do to a person, because I think we all seen what severe anxiety can do to a person. We've seen it ourselves, and we all can relate to having it. But what if you don't have it? You really, in my opinion, can't relate to it. So I want to hear more of her story, but I think this video will tell it through what it can do as well.
Yeah, so this is a video of my son, my story of my depression and my son's anxiety.
As is 14 now. He was 11 when I discovered that he had anxiety. I've been living with it all his life. For a break, be able to breathe, be able to feel the light, because it was so dark. Everything was dark. My depression was situational. My whole situation wasn't great. The whole sector. Things were going wrong in work, there were things wrong at home. I hadn't acknowledged on my son about anxiety. He just wasn't, he was very different to my other three. So he was number two, he was my second son. His birth was traumatic, his pregnancy was traumatic, and he was born crying, and he just cried constantly around things that I couldn't understand, and he would question things, and his behaviour was very needy. But I didn't realise at the time it was an emotional need, not a physical need. He wasn't demanding as such, but I wasn't dealing with his behaviour very well, because I didn't have anywhere in my life that was happy. There was temper tantrums that he had. He never grew out of them. So we used to battle with those. And I just thought at times he was just being a spoiled brat. And it wasn't until I had that realisation that it dawned on me that it was anxiety and panic attacks. He would scream, shout, stamp up the stairs, slam doors. He would pee a lot, go to the toilet a lot. He would wring his hands. There'd be a lot of things he would do. And if I said to him, right, we're going to a fair in 2 weeks' time, he would ask question upon question upon question upon question. My first concern was getting him to understand what anxiety is. And that was difficult because I used the NHS medical description, I used lots of different ways, and in the end we used a Disney character who is an erectile. Penelope von Schweetz is a glitch, and explaining to him that his anxiety is a glitch in his system helped him understand what it was. And that for him was like, okay. And we finally had a foundation on which to work on.
Okay, first of all, before we get back, I love that analogy with Wreck-It Ralph. That is pretty cool. I'm a big Wreck-It Ralph fan. think he's one of my favorite Disney characters, if I'm not gonna lie to you.
It
But
was really
oh, go
a
ahead.
moment of clarity for him, but just to understand that he was like that figure from that cartoon. It was like his life kind of made sense after thinking about Vanellope von Schweetz from Wreck-It Ralph.
Well, that reminds me of getting diagnosed. I was read a book called Understanding Sam, and then when I was told that, my life made sense. Maybe if only it was Wreck-It Ralph, maybe that's where my uniqueness of liking Wreck-It Ralph comes from. I don't know, but only time will tell. That's the question of the day, and the mystery answer will be TBA, but highly likely yes as well.
I think
go ahead.
we just need something to make sense of life sometimes, don't we? As children, we expect them to understand things, and without explaining to them what those things are.
Yeah, I agree with that one. All righty, so let's get into these questions that we should answer. All right, so our first question is, how does our profession intertwine with anxiety? We'll go with the ladies first.
Okay. So my anxiety was kind of caught up with depression, but I would say that the most of my experience with anxiety was with my son. So by helping him overcome his anxiety and for me to understand what anxiety was, allowed me to create this program. It helped me help other people. So for me, the anxiety, by the time I got to the point where I was working with people, my anxiety had kind of disappeared. But I get now to understand when people come to see me, I get to understand what anxiety is. I had a massive panic attack and anxiety attack about a year and a half ago. And it was the first time I truly felt that anxiety to that degree. But it also allowed me again, I like to use my experience with anxiety to help other people. So I get to understand a little bit more about anxiety again while I'm working with clients.
Right. And mine the same way. I met a lot of people on the autism spectrum who also have anxiety. I think that's one of the common traits because my profession intertwines with it since having autism also comes with anxiety. I did a full episode even on it. I knew how to cover this topic because it's so important. I think when you come autism, one thing you're going to have is anxiety. Now, some it could be bipolar, OCD, Tourette's, but I also think it's anxiety, like autism, OCD, anxiety. No matter what you get, it's going to come with the asparagus, which you can translate is anxiety. Are there any questions? So I probably should mention that. When I ask, are there any questions? This is where our audience can actually have the floor open and ask any questions about this question that we just answered. So.
And if nobody else does, I have another question as well.
All right. So Mr. Steele, Miss Farmer, or Mr. Creemans, any questions? And if you want to type in the chat, you're more than happy to as well. Or you can raise your hand too.
I guess I've always been anxious about work and fitting in, and family gatherings. Put it this way: one essential thing is work out how many take as many aspirin or paracetamol as you might need.
Wow, that's really, thank you for sharing that. I have the same fear actually.
Without being dangerous.
Right. I hear you. Mine is family gatherings too. I just don't like the fact that there's a lot of people crammed up in one space. I'm not a fan of big crowds. I never have been. And that causes a trigger for anxiety. Now I can manage it, thankfully, but it still comes with like, oh my gosh. After probably about an hour, I'm done with people. Yeah. All righty, there's nothing else. Let's go on. So what have we both learned from having anxiety? So let's see. I'm going to go ahead first this time, if you don't mind, because I actually am kind of excited about that. what I have learned from my anxiety is that there are resources. I don't think there's a cure. We can all agree there's no cure for this. But from a personal standpoint, even though I have managed it better, I still have days where I'm sweating out of my pants. I literally still have those days. I've also learned that with time, the relevance of anxiety is constantly growing. I mean, before we started this, Hayley and I were talking about how the COVID-19 pandemic led more people to have anxiety.
Yeah. I think for me, I saw a massive rise in people who had never had anxiety before. But I'm going to slightly disagree with you in terms of there's no cure for anxiety. I don't know if I want to call it a cure, but there's definitely work that can be done that allows you to not live in that state of anxiety, full anxiety. I'll give my son as an example. When I've taken him through my program, so he was kind of my guinea pig really in learning about anxiety and developing my program. But the work that we did, the emotional based work, is so in depth that he doesn't have anxiety anymore. He is more worrisome than my other three, but he doesn't have anxiety. He does not live in that state of constant anxiety. He is able to rationalize things, which is something that anxiety takes away from us, is that we can't rationalize things all the time. He can separate that I'm nervous and there's nothing to be nervous about. But I do think we've been sold this idea that when you have anxiety, it's forever. I disagree with the experience of working with clients, my own experience and my son's experience.
This might be because of the autism though, but you see, sometimes in my brain, nervousness and anxiety, it's the same word.
Yeah.
Why
I
is
think
nervousness a word if it's literally anxiety? I mean, it's just maybe tamer anxiety.
Do you think there's degrees of anxiety? There's worry, there's nervousness, there's anxiety. Are they degrees? So it depends on how bad things are.
Sure, I can say that. Yeah, there's maybe to the point where, okay, you are nervous about spilling your milk and you're just careful. You're just a precautious person.
Mm.
Then there's the next level, which is you have it, but it's manageable, which is my case, which is where you just have days where you feel bleh. But then you also have the red level, which is where you're looking over your shoulder. You're where your son is. To use an example.
Yeah. Well, my son's description of his anxiety was that his body buzzed from his head to his feet. So there was constant motion in his body, couldn't sit still. And he because we processed, expressed and released the emotions, the emotional roots to that, for him, he was able to move on. And that's the work that I do with clients. So it'd be interesting to see if that work, that emotional processing, expressing and releasing, would help people with autism as well.
Yeah, you could be right. You never know. Only time will tell. And if it's going to be useful, definitely give it a try. I don't see why not.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions? All righty. Let's go to the next one then. Has our anxiety affected our personal and professional lives? So you can go ahead first.
I'm going to say yes and no. Because it obviously did, because of the emotional side, and I wasn't operating on all cylinders all the time. So I was not ever at my best when anxiety and depression were at play. And then when I had the huge anxiety attack 18 months ago, that it lasted. So the anxiety attack itself, there was a build-up, there was the anxiety attack, and then there was a cool down period. So altogether, it probably lasted about 5 days. And the weird thing about it was that it was because of my professional life, actually. It was something that was going on in my professional life that I'd made the wrong decision. And it impacted how I ate, or if I ate at all. It impacted that I couldn't sit at the table, I couldn't focus, I couldn't put anything I couldn't do anything to help myself to get over it. On the other side, though, I was very aware of the whole process from start to finish. I knew I was having an anxiety attack, and I was extremely aware. And that was a very strange experience, to be so aware of something, knowing that I couldn't control it, I couldn't stop it. I had to just let it ride. That was a really strange experience, but it has affected both personal and professional life.
Right. And for me, it has too. But it's kind of a little bit different for each. I'll explain. So my anxiety has affected my professional and personal life because when I have to deal with the one thing that gives me a tremendous amount of anxiety, and that's people. People give me anxiety. I have to rely on them in my two lives. But let me give you this analogy. As much as I like them, when I'm just vibing with them, like I don't mind going fishing with them. I'd rather do my math homework on my own. I don't like
Huh.
dealing with people when it comes to something important to me. I also say that my anxiety in my personal life came from bullying. I mean, I was bullied in elementary school bad. And as a 21-year-old, I still sometimes get defensive due to not knowing what the intention is when someone is directly speaking to me. So because the people gave me anxiety, I definitely have friends, don't get me wrong, but when you first meet them, holy crap. I'm just nervous because I don't know what their intention is. Is their intention, okay, they are interested in me, or is their intention they're just using me so that they can rip my money off?
Right. So do you think that, are you aware of that process? Are you aware of those thoughts as you go along?
I'm aware of it, but I get really nervous too. I mean, I can give an example. My friend on here, actually, let's spill the beans. Why not? I've been a person who's done that since day one. Like this guy to death, but when I first met him, I wasn't sure of his intention. I thought, does he want to be my friend? Or is he reality trying to do something, whether that be trying to use me to go cheat off homework or use me to get some money off of his hands? I mean, what's the intention? And that question really bothers me. Now, clearly, I got the answer from him, but it's not the same time each time. It's always a different answer.
Do you think there's a level of just personal protection in that? Is there a curiosity and a level of self-protection, but the autism kind of heightens it?
I would say part of it because when I did wait and let that protection out, it led me to bullying. It led me to being lied to. It led me to people getting in my face. So I had to get there to survive, or I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any questions? All righty. Question number 4. How has anxiety affected those around you?
Okay.
So anxiety was really impactful from a parent's perspective of a child living with anxiety, because I kept my anxiety and depression to myself. Nobody knew that I was unwell at all. I was 8 years altogether, but nobody knew. But for my son, as a parent looking at my son, it affected myself, his dad, my ex-husband, his sister, his 2 brothers, because we had to always be aware of what he needed. So we were kind of directed, guided, forced to do things depending on how he was on the day. So it had quite a big impact, and not just going to school, sometimes just going to sports, just going out on a day out. It affected everything for a long time.
Right. Well, my anxiety has affected those around me due to the fear of letting the steamroll. So I will not lie, when I get anxious, I believe the ADHD in mine kicks in. And while it still makes me sleepy, it's actually also a 180 of that. When I get anxious, I also get more alertive and energetic, it does not, it even will turn into sometimes anger or not talking to people. I mean, when the cause goes and that anger goes, that ADHD, it rolls in and I just cannot deal with people. I can't deal with anyone at the moment. My main focus is that one issue. I'm honing in on the math test coming up. Nothing else at that moment matters. I don't even give a crap if the building's on fire. It is that math test. End the story.
And I think that is a trait of anxiety anyway, isn't it? That we have to focus on something. It becomes all consuming, doesn't it? And when it's all consuming for you, it radiates out. That has an impact on all the people around you.
I know, because you just lost a day with them.
Right.
I mean, you're so anxious that you can't even go spend time with your family because life's too short not to spend time with people.
And I think as well, like from my son's perspective, like he would get so overwhelmed. He slammed the door one day so hard that the door frame fell down the stairs. He's almost pushed his father off his feet because he stepped into his space while he was having an anxiety attack. But it's, for me, so from the outside looking into him, I needed to understand what anxiety was. I needed to understand the roots, the causes, all those things to be able to change that for him.
Now,
But it's
I can actually, sorry to interrupt you, but I can relate to your son because I haven't punched people or I haven't, gotten fisticuffs with anyone, but I've hit a lot of things. I've hit walls. I've hit bedposts. I've kicked bedposts. I've even ripped off what do you call those things on wind blinds, or the blinds where you try to blinds, like blinds on the window. I ripped them off because I was so anxious and I was like, this issue needs to be solved now or no way. The steam's out.
It's really, I think it can be really, as a child in particular, but even as adults, it can be really scary because it takes over. And even though you can be aware, there is nothing you can do about it. And that's got to be the worst. You feel extremely out of control.
Right. And what's frustrating to me is what society has taught us is even though there's should be consequences for breaking up a blind, clearly, it's not excused.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's that, isn't there? That there's a reason, but we don't want to take it into excuses, because as we start making excuses, then we start allowing ourselves to do those things. However, we need that understanding that those things are going to happen, and there needs to be a management around that, doesn't there?
I would agree with that 100%. Are there any questions for us, or you know what? Why not we added this? Even you guys can answer it. I don't see why not.
Join us.
I think that Mum protected me and the family protected me a lot when I was younger, so therefore I didn't learn to, wasn't given a chance to cope with situations.
I think it's really tough being a mum to know where the balance is, to find that balance when I had depression and so my depression was at its worst, his anxiety was at its worst. I was so angry with him because I didn't know. I did all the protecting, I did all the supporting, I did all those things that he needed from me. But when it became inconvenient because I was struggling, I became angry. So he started to see that maybe my anger was aimed at him. So we've had conversations since to be able to explain to him that some of the ways that I treated him weren't because of who he was, because of how I was feeling. And as parents, it is our job to protect our children, and it is our job to, to do all those things, but it's whether we do them to extremes or not, and what the impact is, I suppose.
I would agree with that too. All right. Question number 5. Who is your biggest supporter for your anxiety issues? So I'm gonna go ahead and start if you don't mind on this one. My biggest supporters I have are my family. You've heard the phrase, they've supported me since day one. Well, I can tell you I have a family like that. I know a lot of people can say that. I know there's a lot that can't, or that can say it halfway, but I'm telling you, I can have a family like that. You can watch from the get-go, watch me being born if you want to. I don't really care, but I meant from the time I was, not after leaving the hospital, but when I started walking, you could look from there when the anxiety happened, they did support me. And they've seen me at my worst. But they did not say to get over it. It wasn't like a straight, they hit you with the ruler, you stay in attention. No. It was, I still had expectations, but there was no degradation. There wasn't a, like, you should not have anxiety. Oh, therapy's for losers. It wasn't that. It was, I understand you have this, but you can't be in this place all the time. But I hear you loud and clear.
That's a nice response, isn't it? For me, nobody. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't ask for help. Not that I didn't think I needed help. I was ignoring and pretending that I didn't need anybody. And as it goes, when it got to the point where I needed to change my life, I did it myself because I knew I could, or I thought I could. But I was my son's biggest supporter for his anxiety, but I 100% did not get it right. Not for much of the time when he was younger. Before I understood that it was anxiety, I did not get things right.
Well, I'm gonna put it this way. I applaud you for admitting your faults. I really do. And even though, like you have stated, you failed, I do acknowledge your effort. Like, and you at least tried to do it.
It's been a balancing act, really, of not making sure I don't go down the guilt, making myself feel guilty. I didn't know it was anxiety, but obviously there is a guilt around it. But I've had conversations with him to help him understand that how I dealt with things was nothing to do with him. It was my fault. It was my issue. It was my lack of understanding. But since then, things have changed greatly for him. He doesn't need my support for anxiety issues now. He just needs my support to build him up for the next level of his life.
Well, that's awesome. I think your son's going to do wonderful, even with anxiety. And that's something else I should get into. You can still do things with anxiety.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions, or would any audience members like to answer this question?
Okay. Let's see. So my biggest supporter of okay, I would say my biggest supporters of my anxiety issues are probably my friends and family. Like you're saying, okay, so my mom, it's like she knows like whenever I'm anxious, like she knows whenever I'm getting getting my anxiety high, and and she usually I mean, she's really good at talking to me about it, and and saying, hey, like, hey, I mean, it's gonna be all right, like one way or the other, I mean, it is gonna be all right,
Right.
and
Right. I hear you. I was wondering, Ross, can you tell us? You said your mom knows the signs. Do you know some of the signs that are showing that, oh my gosh, I'm anxious?
oh heck yeah, oh heck yeah, yeah. There was well, actually, okay, I remember a time during this one week like where I remember okay, I was gonna go out like to dinner with you and your mom, and I got kind of nervous because I mean, I wanted to make a good first impression like on your mom,
Right. And I'm
you know
I'm
and
very happy that you wanted to do that. I'm very happy.
yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, and then I was like, you know what? I mean, whatever happens, happens, and I let the night play out, and the night went really, really well. Like, like Sam's mom was like really, really sweet, and like, and she, uh, like, okay, so when we were sitting down there, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually going well. And I kind of got worked up about nothing.
Right. But Ross, let's be honest. I'm not trying to disengrave what you said, but it's hard to get worked up. It's hard to get worked up. It's easy to get worked up over nothing because I think sometimes with the autism, I don't know if you heard the expression, we smell rats. Like we always smell something fishy going on. Like some
Yeah.
where it's like, what is their intention here? Are they really inviting me to dinner because they want to eat a nice meal with me? Or are they trying to take some of the money? Or are they trying to just make me look like a fool?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I've had people that I mean, that I thought were my friends, but then they turned out to be not that. So excuse me. So right now it's like I'm very selective about about who I meet because I don't want like to get into a bad situation like where I meet someone and at first they seem okay but then they turn out to be a jerk. So
Right. Right. Well, Haley, did your son run ever into that? Just out of curiosity.
No, he's a very easygoing child. He didn't show any anxiety in school, so he was never bullied for it. But he was very sensitive, so he felt things a lot more than other people. So maybe when they were playing rugby, if a child criticized him, he would feel it more, but it wouldn't necessarily be bullying.
Right. Right. I hear you on that one. All right. Well, I think we should go on. Number 6, has anxiety stopped you from achieving anything in your life? I think I'm gonna go ahead and start this one too, if you guys don't mind. So for me, no. It actually has not just stopped me from achieving anything. But one of the traits that some people have is they will go into the storm head first. Well, I'm one of those people. I'll explain why I'm getting into this. That being said, it hasn't stopped from achieving something, but it can be a damper. So there have been times when I'm doing schoolwork, but I'm not hearing anything. I mean, when I am looking at that assignment, I'm not worried about anything. I am not worried about that. Clearly, it can be a damper when someone needs your attention immediately.
Yeah. For me, the anxiety and depression has made me who I am. Overcoming that didn't stop me from doing it. It's actually made me or allowed me or enabled me to do something that I never thought possible. And for my son, it hasn't stopped him. He's run for Wales. He's run for Welsh schools. He's played rugby. He's got all these dreams that he's got on his, in his vision board that he will achieve. And I think it's definitely a mindset thing when it comes to anxiety, although I truly believe that when it's all consuming, it can stop us from doing things.
Yeah, it definitely can. It definitely can stop us. I mean, I bet probably one of the reasons why I didn't have a lot of people come to the gala. Well, I had some people, but okay, let me rephrase. So last year we had a gala, and I think part of the reason why people didn't go was because of the parking, and a lot of people have anxiety over the road, and I think road rage comes from that anxiety.
I think anxiety can often be, what's the word? portrayed, or it comes out, it manifests in anger. And I think there's a lot of times when people are anxious, but it's anger that whatever they do as a result of the anxiety, it's the anger that drives it.
I would agree with you on that one. Would anyone else want to chime in or answer the question or have any questions for us?
I guess that being protected by my mum has meant that, because I guess she knew that I did get worried, or wasn't quite normal, whatever that is, meant that sort of, oh, sort of you could do this, you could do that. Sort of, if sort of write a book about this because, and I think I wouldn't do it probably because I was scared of failing, and in my family, you don't, if you failing is not good, so you don't try.
Ah, that's interesting. Do you feel that if the mindset had been that failing or mistakes are a lesson to learn from, that you might have been, I'm going to use the word braver, or more curious, or would you think you would have pushed yourself more?
I think so, yes. Like if something as daft as, right, you've got to put out a pattern for needlework. She did it for me, so it was done properly. This was
Okay.
at school. What
Yeah.
would have been the major problem if it hadn't come out right?
Yeah. And do you challenge that now with yourself, or do you feel that you still follow that pattern?
I think I'm aware that I could do it, fall back into it.
Yeah.
But I think I do at least try, like doing posts. Although this isn't great post, but at least I've gotten done something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose it's a stepping stone to learn from, isn't it? When you start, if we are getting stopped by the anxiety or worrying about the rejection, worrying about failing, for some people it's worrying about success, having anxiety around success. If we can do it anyway and then learn from it, then it means that we get more confidence going forward in doing and trying more things.
Never thought about failing as being a success.
Yeah, there's many people. It was one of my biggest things when I had depression, that I was more afraid of success than I was failure.
Maybe you get a job. Oh, how will I cope with it? Cope in it.
Yeah, and
If
if you've never experienced success, how do you be successful? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And I suppose it's the same with failure. I suppose we recognize what failure is because it feels bad. But if you've never experienced success, it's quite surprising how many people are afraid of it.
I think part of the reason why success might be kind of scary, truth be told, is we definitely want to be successful, but there's an expectation of wanting to become successful. And I just wonder sometimes, is that expectation too much of a standard?
I think we have a habit of assuming what success and those expectations, what they're supposed to be like. But actually, when we learn to define what success means to us, then we get to change that. We get to change the expectations too.
Right, I would agree with that one. All right, let's go to number 7 here. What was the most memorable experience with anxiety? Would you like to go?
Yeah. Oh, I have many of these. Oh, I have so many. But I'm going to tell you the one about my son's kind of aha moment. We'd gone to a lake where we've been many times before, but this was the first time of ever encountering a sheep, because people had let their dogs up and a sheep had been chased into the part of the lake where we were. And when my children went to herd the sheep back into the field, they were fine, but then he turned and ran at them again, and that triggered a huge huge anxiety attack. And I can laugh now, it wasn't funny at the time. My son was screaming, he was spitting when he was screaming, he was shouting at me, he was crying, he was stamping his feet. But I forced him to go where the sheep went. And it sort of ended up where he was hanging off a tree. My two little ones were trying to get over the fence, and the sheep was just trying to get past. So I was holding on to the dogs. Harrison was up a tree, my two little ones on the fence, and my eldest were trying to get the sheep past. And eventually the sheep passed. And my son just put his hood up and he walked. But that was a turning point for him, because all the work I'd been doing with him prior to that for about 3 to 4 months all fell into place. So he kind of needed that experience with that sheep, that fear of that sheep, because he suddenly realized that there was this little voice saying, you're safe, you are safe. But there was this huge voice that was saying to him, the sheep is going to kill you. And what he could hear both voices. He could hear that you're safe, but he could not reach that. It was more about this, oh my God, he's going to kill me. So afterwards, he was able to say to me that the sheep didn't have a knife, the sheep didn't have a gun, he didn't even have horns or massive teeth. So there was actually no way that he could kill him. So he was able to rationalize the whole thing from start to finish, which then allowed him to learn that process for future anxiety attacks. So he learned from there, he learned how to spot the early warning signs of anxiety, of the anxiety attacks, and deal with them earlier on. And it changed his life, that did.
That's an amazing story. So my memorable experience with anxiety, it's not a day, but certain days. So I will have days where even though I know I have a community, that community is a metaphorical zero, non-existent, zippity notch. I don't have anyone on my back. I basically go back to where I was when I was 15 years old. So for 15 years old, I was a pretty anxious person. I dealt with the exclusion. I was hitting puberty. I didn't like who I was. I was even depression. I even thought to a point, well, I'm going to use alcohol as a coping mechanism at 15 years old. Now, clearly, I wasn't doing it to think I'm going to go get joyful. No, I wanted to use alcohol at that time frame to soothe the mental health issues, which was partially anxiety, to just sleep through it. I didn't want to deal with it. I want to sleep through it, mask it in retrospect. And again, part of it was other mental health issues, but it got so bad to a point where I thought a simple high by blood, which is mother, father, or grandfather, or by peers, such as friend from first grade, friend from second grade, was very scary. It was greeting a person who was not blood, but was blood.
Wow. Amazing. It's funny, isn't it, how we reach out for the negative things to help us cope before we discover the positive things.
I would say it is. I mean, it's very comical, but I also think at the same, and I'm saying comical not because it's funny, but comical, it's like people go there. Wow. That it's like uncomfortable laughter, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
in the seriousness of it, it's in our brain, we tried everything. We tried calming down. We tried medicine. We tried doing it ourselves. I tried therapy. I tried counseling. I tried life coach. Bam, bad, bad, bad. Well, what else are you supposed to do?
But I think this is something I see a lot with my clients. Okay, so clients will come and say, I've tried everything. You are my last hope. But when I dig down, what they've actually done is tried everything within their kind of resources. So everything that they understand that they can try. So when they come to me, I'm very different. I don't work in the same way as anybody else. So I am different, but they're not looking for different. They're only looking for what they understand. So when we say, I've done everything I possibly can, yes, within your resources that you understand for now, we just got to look outside of those to be able to find the thing that works for you.
Right. And how much time, just out of curiosity, question for you, what's the longest time you've ever had to figure out for a client, okay, this is the thing that works for him or her.
It's the same process for everybody, and it lasts about 3 months.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I'll give you props for that one. Anyone
Thank
else
you.
want to chime in or answer this question or have a question for either of us?
For me, very anxious times with driving tests, but interestingly, it's with job interviews, with mum saying, you have to say this, you have to say that, and me being anxious because thinking it ain't going to come naturally to me, and me being more anxious about telling her I didn't say what she wanted me to say, and it was something her idea of a really good question in a job interview. What do people say your failings are? People say I laugh too much. And that breaks the atmosphere.
Yeah. Have you, or I suppose when you went last for a job interview, were you able to overcome that?
Oh, I've overcome it ages back. I didn't get that job no for some strange reason. So I couldn't be myself. But
Yeah.
no, I'd go along there, be myself. Um I didn't know I was autistic then.
Okay.
And I just have a fidget toy going away in the background if people see it. I do actually go in open, you're autistic now.
Wow.
So I don't know whatever the expected responses are, they get some warning that they may not get expected responses.
But sometimes those expected responses, when somebody does not act within those expected responses, it's sometimes better, isn't it? Because actually it's something that they haven't thought about.
Yes, it's just I do say, did that answer everything? Which
Yeah.
does give them the chance to say if, but because okay, they may not have know about autism,
Mm.
but but okay, there might be something different here.
Mm. Yeah.
But most job interviews recently have been online, which means I can fidget away quite contentedly. But I do go along with a fidget toy, and some people see it, and I think they know about them from experience, and they can just accept them.
Mm. Acceptance is huge, isn't it?
And acceptance comes with the anxiety too. I mean, if you think about it, you're not the same with acceptance that you have to come to yourself if you're on the autism spectrum, has to come with the anxiety too. I mean, you've heard the phrase before, you can't help them unless they help themselves. They have to take the first step.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was told it said somewhere you can't hide autism. So I don't even try to hide it. Doesn't
I don't know.
doesn't
Is that a societal thing that I know we're going off on a tangent a little bit, but is there a societal pressure that that people with autism feel they need to hide it?
yes, the pressure is still out there. Do you disclose or don't you disclose? I've got autism. Oh, we've got a Rain Man coming on board.
Right.
I'm going
Whereas a
to
lot of
respectfully agree and disagree. I agree that it's still there, but we're further than we once were. I mean, now we can be out in public versus back in 1930, we were institutionalized.
Temple Grandin, whatever you think of her views, she was nearly She was recommended by the medical profession that she be institutionalized.
think we've come a long way. Same with mental health. I think we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go.
I would agree
Yes.
with that statement. Yes.
Mm.
All righty. Let's go along to the next question here. How did your anxiety affect you in school? All right, I'll start with this one. My anxiety affected me in school because when I did my work, I got scared of failing. Miss Farmer said earlier, scared of failing. Well, that was me too. I was scared of failing because I wanted to be a good student. I mean, even though there are like 3 good grades, for me, no, there wasn't. Because just like most teachers hate the grading, I hate the grading because I only can get A's and B's. Now, I'm not complaining like, oh, I should have had A, B's, and C's. No, I understand that rule. But it came with the fact that the minute I got a C, I was hauled over, or there would be a demand that I fixed it. And I also had test anxiety. So if I knew, I did everything in my power to get the concept. I went to the resource room. I went to the teacher. I had a win, which is what I need, which is where I have a one-on-one session with her because clearly they can't teach every student alive one at a time. They can't work with all their needs sometimes, in my opinion. But it was just not clicking, and then I would go into the test, not gain the knowledge, the anxiety would rise. And in general, I'm always the last to finish a test because I'm gonna quadruple check to make sure. All right, I'm confident on this one. I'm gonna relook at that one.
So from my perspective, personally, I didn't have anxiety in school. I don't remember being even worried in school. I didn't like school. I just got on with it. And for my son, he masked all day in school. He didn't show his anxiety in school in any way, shape, or form. I would go into school and they'd say, oh, he's this and he's that. He's a wonderful student. He's helpful. He's conscientious. He needs a bit of support. He's respectful, all these things. And I'd say to the teachers, does he ever have like meltdowns? And they're like, no. But at home, he was having 8 or 9, what I thought were meltdowns, but they were anxiety attacks at home. So he was hiding completely his anxiety.
Wow, I
Quite
hate that
reasonable,
for
I
your son.
suppose. Was that quite reasonable for it? Was because you didn't. Was it wrong to show it?
I think for him, where he was safe showing it was at home. School wasn't as safe. If you think about it, if had he reacted, would his friendships have been affected? So there was a lot of, I suppose, risks with showing the anxiety in school. So being able to do it at home just made sense to him. I'm not saying it was a good or a bad thing, but no, he was wonderful in school. Just at home, it was hard at home. It was challenging.
Jekyll and Hyde, right, from Disney.
A little bit, sort of, yeah. He was a different child. And it's usually the other way around in schools. You know, they say in schools they're really naughty in school, and parents would say, oh, no, they're really good in the house. He wasn't bad. He was never a naughty child. He was just, the emotional side of it was off the charts at home. But yet in school, he was they'll tell you in college, he is the ideal child to teach.
I think I was very good at school. Rules were there to be followed, but my handwriting was appalling. I was bullied. Didn't tell Mum. I don't open up, but when it comes to things like I'm good with crafts, hand-eye coordination, and which is my right hand, which is my left hand. I remember being a major issue until I was 8 and discovered Lord Nelson of Trafalgar, who lost his right arm, and you got nice pictures.
Oh, so
And
that
you can
helped
work
you.
a great deal because I could look at a picture and relate to the picture rather than a word.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah, I'm weird. I'm the opposite. I've always been the word person who can understand when someone's speaking and reading a book versus a picture, the way I think. I don't think in pictures, I think in words. I'm a descriptive person where I can describe to you a movie set, what I want it to look like versus drawing it out. I just can't do that.
It's good to be different, isn't it?
Oh, it's wonderful to be. All righty. I think if anyone doesn't have anything else to say, we'll go on to the next question here. What do you do to cope with your anxiety? Oh, I call this one, sorry, shotgun.
You go ahead.
Music, music, music. This is a tool that's useful to me because I'm not watching anything. So when I'm anxious, that movement kicks in, the ADHD. I have never understood how someone at all could sit that long and watch a 2-hour film. I don't know how people do that. I've always been a TV series guy because the longest I can sit for still in general without in the day-to-day life, when it comes to this or jobs, it's a little different. When it comes to having fun at home or having fun at wherever, usually it's for 30 minutes. That's the longest I've done it for without not being professional. However, when I have the headphones and I can move with noise or sound, it's the best feeling alive because I need to hear something to calm down. You would think the birds chirping would be enough, but it's not. Plus, I also do lots of zoning out where I escape the situation, go to a peaceful place. So zoning out to me in general means I'll go to a world that makes more sense or a world that I want to be in. Sometimes it's literally ACDC, Nickelback concert, or it has been before, a wrestling ring surrounded by a beach with sand in it because I like tropical and professional wrestling. I've created little worlds that make sense versus sometimes in a world that doesn't make sense.
So going back to your last question, you said that you don't think in pictures. Is that a visualization?
Well, I think it depends for some of the spectrum. Some do, some don't.
But do you visualize in the boxing ring, the tropical climate? Are you visualizing that in your head? Is that how you zone out?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some level of creativity within how you think.
Right. But you see, I had to describe it. I couldn't say, look at this picture, here's what I think.
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah,
literally say it's a wrestling ring with sand.
Yes. Yeah. So how do I cope with my anxiety? I don't suffer with anxiety now. But I do obviously work with clients, and one of the simplest things is breathing. Because for me, mindfulness was never a thing. I could not stop my brain and sit still to do the meditation mindfulness kind of thing. But I've learned that my kind of mindfulness is going for a walk and just, as you said, Sam, describing what I'm seeing, describing the trees, describing the birds, describing the sounds, describing what's around me. And that's a really good technique for me. But I just like to immerse myself in nature anyway. I went for a walk on the beach today and I just felt like all of a sudden I could breathe, which I hadn't felt. I felt really kind of really stuffed up this morning. And I went to the beach and then I was like, oh, I could breathe again. So breathing is my kind of main free activity. But I do a lot of self-development as well. So I'm constantly learning about who I am and what things mean to me and how do I explain that? How does it make sense to me? And that, I don't know, that really soothes me. It was part of my recovery journey with depression. So it'll be a lifelong skill I've learned through depression and anxiety.
Oddly enough, breathing does not work for me. I tried it before, but when I breathe or count to 10, I get more worked up. It's like, and then it's just a bowl in a China
Wow.
shop, if you think about it. But then if I count to 10, I get more worked because I get to the end result, I don't know what it is, but it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. and it's just working myself up to where everyone's out to get me.
I had a client who came to me and she used to do the 5 things, 4 things, 3 things, 2 things, 1 thing. So she would go through looking for 5 things around her. Then she'd look for 4 things. Then she'd look for 3 things. Then she'd look for 2 things. Then she'd look for 1. And that worked for her. But I think that with the breathing, you've got to find a rhythm that works for you. And I don't know, you know, there's times when things that you do all the time don't work. But I tried the Wim Hof. I don't know if you've seen his breathing techniques. I thought I was going to die the first time I tried his breathing techniques. They were so, I've never breathed like that before, but they were really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wow, I mean, I might look into that. That's not a bad idea. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe the breathing was no rhythm, and then it just turned to a big mess.
So finding a rhythm that suits you, and the rhythm doesn't matter what the rhythm is, as long as it works for you.
I'll try that. I can probably create some rhythms in my head.
Yeah, do the music.
Yeah, I like music, so it works. Now, I want actually both of our audience members to answer this question.
With the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I can never remember which order it is in, but you can do 5, what can I see? 4, what can I feel? 3, what can I do? Whichever. Smelling is not good because with hay fever. But just doing that just grounds you a
Good.
bit. And some people say tapping.
Yeah, tapping's a good one. It's the it's engaging all your senses, isn't it? That's what mindfulness is really. It's engaging all your senses and bringing them to life. Because I think we do neglect our senses quite a lot, I think. I think we've forgotten like to stop and smell the cut grass and to taste our food, because I'm a fast eater. I don't taste my food sometimes. But it's good to do that, to take the time to become aware of where we're at again.
Right. I got to hear from you, Ross. I want to know how you cope, brother. I've actually been wondering that for a long while, believe it or not. Maybe not. Okay. All right, no worries. We can just go on to the next question, not a big deal. Question number 10. Oh, go on. Oh, mindfulness and lots of grounding. Yeah, I agree with that. Nope, someone said that on here. Jose, why not say name? Jose, yeah, mindfulness. What do you mean by lots of grounding, though? I never heard of that. I'm guessing that means like figuring out what you do or figuring out.
Grounding into the earth. It's connecting with the earth.
Huh, interesting. I've never heard of that. All righty. Why not go in another one here? All righty. Question number 9. Oh, I already. Why did that happen? Accidents happen. Okay, I think we're on question. We're on question. Yeah, question 10. I think we're good to go. What advice would you give to others that have anxiety? So my advice for someone who has anxiety is to find their tribe and support system. I definitely mean your family and peers, but it also means others out there that understand what it's like to be anxious, because anxiety is real. But in my opinion, you cannot know what it's like to be severely anxious if you never had it. It's like getting bullied. Only certain people know what it's like to get severely bullied. It's the same thing with anxiety. The one positive thing with anxiety is it creates a community.
I think having that support network is a great thing. For me, my advice would be to find out what works for you. So it's okay listening to other people and what works for them, but it's not good to be comparing when, let's say you have somebody who says that breathing works for them and you try breathing and it doesn't work for you. It makes you feel like a failure. But it's definitely looking at, okay, so like we've just talked about breathing now, Sam, that maybe if you use music to get that rhythm with your breathing, maybe it'll work for you. But if it doesn't, it's not that it's you're failing at that. It's that it just doesn't work for you. So it's understanding what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And my biggest thing is always do it until it works, and then find the next thing that works for you.
Right. Or maybe another idea, you can have multiple solutions.
I think the more you've got, the better. But it has to be unique to you. There's no one way fits all. There's no you have to do it a particular way. Find all the things that help you with your anxiety and process, express, and release those emotions.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. Anyone else want to chime in, or anyone have a question for either of us?
Well, in offices, I can find them distracting. I don't know whether that's anxiety, technically speaking. But I have sometimes I like to have music on. Sometimes I don't like to have music on. If people is nearby on a phone, then they will turn the music up so that I can actually focus.
Right. I mean, it all depends. Oh, someone on here said seek help from mental health professionals. You know, from a personal standpoint, I'm not going to say mental health therapists suck. No, I would never say that. But it's just, I think it depends on who. I think some therapy is a great tool. For others, no. Some others, it's just maybe it's because I'm hard-headed or what might be the case. But some people, I think it's better if they figure it out on their own. I mean, look at Hayley here.
I think it's all about, again, it's back to what works for you, isn't it? And it's having the right kind of support, the right kind of network, the right kind of tools, the right kind of resources. And sometimes that's hard to gauge when you're really struggling with your anxiety, when you're absorbed by it and you're consumed by it. And it's okay to try something. And if it doesn't work, it's okay to move on to the next thing. So making sure you have everything that meets your needs.
Yeah, it is pretty true. And we
And
all
you don't need to go to family
Sometimes
or colleagues.
No, sometimes, and it's knowing that I always, my biggest word for people when I work with clients is find the trusted people. Don't just give your information to anybody and everybody. Work with people you trust, and that may well be a professional, or it could well be somebody in your family or your friend network or your colleagues, but they have to be trusted. And I think that's sometimes quite difficult and challenging when you're struggling. But if you are more free with your information, your personal information, with people who are not trusted people, and that's when it can go wrong. So making sure that if you're looking for somebody professional or personal, make sure that you trust them and that you can work with them, that you can feel supported by them.
I would agree with that. And truth be told, though, my question is, this is probably someone from the spectrum asking this question. How do you know? I mean, how do you know who to trust?
Well, now this
But
is the
everyone,
thing.
again, has different intentions.
Yeah, I would agree. And the way that I work with clients is it's my job to earn your trust. So when a client comes to me, from the minute that they're in my world, it is my job to earn their trust. And the minute they feel that I'm not doing that I'm not earning their trust, they have the right to turn around and tell me or walk away. But I've learned how to earn trust very quickly. Now, there's the way that I see trust, and this is really a kind of a personal way. For me, it's about people earning my trust. It's about me learning how to trust people. So trust is an inside job. It's an instinct thing. People assume that it's somebody else's job to earn their trust. Even though I said earlier that it's my job to earn your trust, it's up to you to listen to your gut as to whether that person is the right person for you. So your internal, that gut instinct is there as a self-protective measure. But what we do over the years, from childhood through to adulthood, we numb that voice and we stop listening to it. We go through different experiences which teach us that not to listen to it. So we have to tune back into that and really feel that energy and that instinct. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say so. And truth be told, it's a good way, I think, to wrap this up. I thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. It was definitely a blast. I think we all can assure that. I think we've all answered some questions of anxiety. I appreciate y'all coming. For me personally, if you want to check out more of my information, go to autismrocksbills.com, or you can drop in an email at info@autismrocksbills.com. This has definitely been a blast. I would say 100% fun. I think I've learned some stuff about a new colleague over here and totally met some new friends along the way. So yeah, I ain't complaining. Hayley, any closing remarks for you?
Oh, just thank you everybody for coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging with us and giving us your questions and your insights as well, because I love to learn from people. So as Sam said, I've learned as well tonight. It'd be lovely to connect on social media. You can find me on any platform on social media as Hayley T. Wheeler. Yeah, certainly can connect with both of us, I'm sure. Just get in touch. Please do. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, and I'm more than happy to stay in contact with people and answer any questions you might have after as well.
Yeah, and we're both happy to answer questions on anxiety too. If you're listening to this and you want to drop one of us an email, trust us, we know anxiety.
We really do.